Hey, hello Grassroots. Hope you guys are doing well this morning. I wanted to get you going in your groups with our reading today, as well as say a few words about some other housekeeping matters. So this week is the second week that you may have seen the church is gathering together in prayer on Friday mornings. We've got specific times devoted to praying for the church in our transition. The board is leading us through that in this time, and everyone is invited. If you can't make it to Friday mornings, 8 a.m. prayer times, I invite you, the board is inviting you guys to pray for a half hour throughout the week on your own, to devote a specific amount of time, a half hour every week, to pray for wisdom, for God's favor, for just sharing our hearts with one another and with the Lord on the future of our church. So y'all are invited. Feel free to find out more information on our website or on the on your newsletters. So as we get jumping into your verse this week, we're building off of last time. Last week we read Matthew chapter 23, in which Jesus was warning people with some tough words. So this week in chapter 24, we have more tough words from Jesus. Last week, Jesus was teaching on hypocrites and how humility, choosing humility and the way of humility is the key, the pathway of salvation from being hypocrites or whitewashed tombs, as Jesus calls them. This week, we begin with Jesus' teaching on the last days or the end of an age. But I'm really inviting you as you read this to be careful not to be too distracted by the end times teaching here. If Jesus last time was warning against people being spiritual hypocrites, this time he is warning us about being spiritually asleep. These are people who have real faith, but they allow themselves to get sleepy, slipping maybe back into the way of being that we do when we think nobody else is watching. Think of like dating. When we start dating on the dating scene, we try to impress other people. We dress up for dates. We buy gifts. We put ourselves in the best light that we possibly can. And yet, over time, after the course of long living, oftentimes we can get complacent. We take for granted what's always there in front of us, and we forget to tend to the relationships. So Jesus here is not giving a metaphor of dating, but of sleeping and waking, because true life, actual freedom in life, comes from our inheritance as being people of resilience. Now, this isn't a message that when you're tired and fatigued and needing to grieve, you should just press on through with your eyes shut. This is not that message, but this is the message of Jesus empowering his people to face what feels like situations of impending doom, and to live and to work and with steadfastness to live faithfully in the midst of it with great gracefulness. So last time Jesus asking us to be humble. This time he is inspiring us with a way of being resilient. And it so happens that Jesus couches this invitation in end times teaching, which we have to keep an open mind to and not assume that we know what Jesus is talking about, because so many people have speculated about this teaching and they've gained influence and they've twisted the teaching. So here's what I mean. First, take the Noah story. Just as it was in the time of Noah, Jesus begins. And this is where we get our teaching about rapture from. But see how the rapture is twisted in our modern imagination from what Jesus is saying. Just as it was in the time of Noah, Jesus says, before the flood, they were eating and drinking, and they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them away. So the floods of judgment came in to sweep them away. And leaving behind Noah and his family in the ark of salvation, and the floods of judgment coming and taking away those who were doing evil. If this is rapture, which one do you want to be in this scenario? And so Jesus says, so it will be in the turning of the age. 2 will be in a field, and 1 will be taken away, and 1 will be left, thanking their saving graces, basically. See how modern fiction has turned this around and twisted it backwards. Or think of all the prophecies. Many will lead people astray, Jesus says. Many false messiahs will come along and will ask for allegiance. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. We've got to do a lot of work here to recognize, a lot of history work to recognize that the prophecies of Daniel, which were prophesying forward, were all fulfilled in Jesus's time. And Jesus' own prophecies, many of them were fulfilled in 70 AD. So we have to be careful to use those prophecies properly. Of course, God can speak through old prophecies to give us messages for our future. But many of these prophecies have already come to pass. The turning of the age, Jesus speaks. Anyway, the central point is this. If we get so caught up in the end times teachings, and if we twist them, and if we misunderstand them, we can become what we might call escapists. People who, when the first sign of things turning out poorly arrives, we turn and jump ship and try to find better situations. Jesus, of course, is calling for wisdom. He's telling the people, when Rome comes and attacks Jerusalem, which is inevitably coming, you don't need to be in the city for that. Go out into the wilderness. Don't stay inside the city walls when they're getting bombed, but flee to your own safety. But at the same time, as you do so, hold out hope. Hold out the message of the good news of the gospel, even in that time. And the truth is that our future, which still is to come to pass, is like a dim mirror. We can't quite see through it. We can't quite see what's on the in its reflection. But we must, nevertheless, because of Jesus' teaching here, focus less on the terror of the situation that we're living through, and focus our minds and our hearts spiritually on God. We need to avoid either becoming a freedom fighter conscripted into the wars of this world, or we need to avoid being simply slaves to the systems of evil that are around us. We keep freedom in the way of Jesus. We keep up our resilience, and we stay awake to Jesus' word. And that's the key to it all here. It's why reading our scriptures and diving into the Gospels are so important in times of distress. Because Jesus says his words will never pass away. That which he has given us in his teachings, recorded in the Gospels, lived out first by Paul and discovered in his writings, and all the way to our day and age today, Jesus' words will not pass away. They are enduring and filled with wisdom and life. And in the midst of a terrible time, if we don't keep our hearts and minds in the words of Jesus, we will find ourselves surely at a great loss. Okay, I hope this gets you going today. Feel free to share with one another whatever's on your hearts today, and may the Holy Spirit, the author of life, come and enlighten you today.